Welcome to the ACE Project, brought to you by the Literacy.io team at Texas A&M University. I'm your host, Ashley Stack, also known as Captain Comprehension. We are so excited you'll be joining us on this reading journey and hope you and your child enjoy this time together. So get comfy, rev up your brains, and get ready to think, because we are ready to help you become a comprehension detective.
Welcome back, Super Readers. My name is Captain Comprehension, and I am here to guide you as you become a comprehension detective. Welcome to week 23 of our podcast. This week, we're reading Jamie O'Rourke and the Big Potato. Have you ever heard the saying, "It takes a village"? In today's story, Jamie O'Rourke and the Big Potato, a lazy man faces a problem, and it takes the whole village to solve it. Let's be detectives and find out if they're successful. Before we begin, let's go over some important vocabulary that will help us better understand the passage. Our first term is wrenched. Wrenched means to injure or strain. A synonym or word that means the same might be pulled or twisted. An antonym could be healed or straightened. Our second word is furious. Furious is showing or exhibiting anger. A synonym or word that means the same might be mad or frantic, and an antonym or opposite would be relaxed or calm. Next, we have the word pondering. Pondering means to weigh on your mind or to think about. A synonym or word that means the same might be considering, contemplating, or planning, and an antonym or opposite would be being impulsive or acting without thought. Finally, we have the word outsmart. Outsmart means to get the better of someone. A synonym or word that means the same would be being clever, outshine, outwit, or outthink. And an antonym or opposite might be being slow-witted. Pause your videos, detectives. It's time to kick off the texting survey. Text POD 23, that's POD 23 to 866-903-2545. That'll get your questions rolling. Which word is a synonym for pondering? A. Healed. B. Acting on a whim. C. Contemplating. D. Positioning. Which word helps the reader understand the definition of the word furious? A. Frantic. B. Overjoyed. C. Relaxed. D. Easygoing. It's time for us to read. I hope you enjoy Jamie O'Rourke and the Big Potato. Jamie O'Rourke was the laziest man in all of Ireland. He would do anything to avoid working, especially if it had to do with growing potatoes. "Jamie O'Rourke," his wife Eileen would say, "we'll have nothing to eat this winter if you don't go out and dig up the praties." "Oh, the saints preserve us," Jamie would whine. "Me back's as sore as can be. Sure as I'm telling you, wife, you'll have to dig 'em up yourself. I'll break in two if I so much as get up out of this bed." So Eileen, who had done all the planting and watering and weeding anyhow, would go out to the tiny garden and dig up the smallest potatoes in Ireland, all because Jamie was too lazy to dig a larger garden and had no money to buy good potato seed. Then poor Eileen wrenched her back and was laid up in bed. "Saint Bridget and the Virgin Mary herself must have smiled on Eileen O'Rourke," the village women said. "Why, it's the first rest she's had since she married Jamie O'Rourke." With Eileen in bed, Jamie began to worry. No Eileen to dig meant no praties all winter, and no praties meant no food. "Oh, poor me," wailed Jamie. "I'll starve to death. I'd best go to church and confess to Father O'Malley. There's no telling how soon Old Death will be knocking on me door." So even though it was midnight, Jamie set out for the church. He was about halfway down the hill when he heard singing and a tap-tap-tapping sound. "Sure, and I wouldn't be knowing," Jamie whispered, "but I swear it's a leprechaun. And sure enough, sitting in a circle of ferns in the moonlight was a leprechaun singing and hammering tiny nails into the heels of the fairy boots he was making. Jamie knew just what to do. He crept up and grabbed the little man by his coat tails and held firm. "Let me go! Let me go!" the leprechaun shouted. "Not on your life," Jamie said. "Not until you show me where you keep your pot of gold." Now everyone in Ireland knows that leprechauns make boots and dancing shoes for the fairies, who pay for them with gold. And everyone knows that if you catch a leprechaun, he'll pay for his freedom with his pot of gold. But this leprechaun was cleverer than most. "Oh, please, Mr. Mortalman," he pleaded. "I'm just starting out making fairy shoes, and I only have 1 or 2 pieces of gold in my pot. Won't you take a wish instead?" "Why, what would I wish for?" Jamie asked. "Me who's about to die of starvation because my wife is sick in bed and can't dig the praties for the winter? And they're such puny praties anyhow." "Well," said the leprechaun, reaching into his pocket, "you could wish for the biggest pratie in the world. It would last all winter, and you wouldn't have to do anything more than plant this seed, water it, and wait." That sounded wonderful to Jamie. "Done!" he shouted. And as the leprechaun dropped the seed into Jamie's hand, Jamie let go of his coat-tails, and off that leprechaun scampered. When Eileen heard what he had done, she was furious. "Jamie O'Rourke, you're not only the laziest man in Ireland, but a fool as well, giving up a pot of gold for a pratie seed." "Well, I'm going to plant this seed and water it, and you'll see," Jamie said, and out he went. And faith, Eileen did see. In no time at all, the biggest, finest potato plant had sprouted out of the ground, followed by the potato itself. It was so big it pushed up not only all the dirt in the garden, but the garden shed and the corner of the cottage as well. "Well, surely now it's ready to dig," Jamie said proudly. He hoed all around it, but he couldn't dig the pratie out of the ground. He got a beam and a big rock and tried to pry it out. He pushed and he pushed, but it wouldn't budge. As he was pondering what to do, his neighbor passed by on his way to the village. He couldn't believe his eyes. He couldn't wait to tell everyone in the village what he had seen. And before you knew it, the hill up to Jamie's was filled with villagers coming to see the big potato. "Where did it come from?" they asked. Jamie told them about the lucky night he had caught the leprechaun and how smart he had been. "Why, anyone could have gotten the pot of gold," he bragged. "But the biggest pratie in the world, well, that took some doing." "However did you outsmart a leprechaun?" they all asked at once. Jamie hesitated and scratched his head. "We'll help you dig up your pratie, Jamie, if you'll tell us how you did it." And they grabbed shovels and hoes and started to dig. They dug and they dug and they pushed and they shoved until the potato flew up out of its hole. It rolled down the hill faster and faster until it reached the bottom, where it bounced up high and came to a stop, wedged between the stone walls on either side of the road. What to do now? "That pratie is so big that no one, no cart, nothing can get by it," the constable complained to Father O'Malley. "How's the body going to get in or out of the village?" "What shall we do?" the villagers wailed. Then they all looked at Jamie and said, "It's your pratie. You'll have to move it out of our way." Well, Eileen spoke up. "There's more than enough pratie for everyone. Why don't you all take some?" So the villagers sawed and chopped and carted off huge pieces of potato while Jamie sat on the stone wall and watched. All winter long, everyone had potato to eat, and eat, and eat, until no one wanted to see or hear of potato again. In the spring, Jamie said, "I saved a potato eye for a seed, and it's just about time to plant it." "Oh, no!" the villagers all cried. "If you promise not to plant it, Jamie, we'll promise before St. Patrick and all the saints that to see that you and Eileen always have plenty to cook and eat. We don't want another giant pratie around here." Jamie smiled and agreed. What a perfect life for a lazy man. "And so you see, darling Eileen," Jamie told her, "I wasn't such a fool with that leprechaun after all." And Eileen had to admit that Jamie O'Rourke was right. What a great story. So while I was reading, I was thinking, what is the text structure of Jamie O'Rourke and the Big Potato? Well, we heard that Jamie had faith, and the potato, blocked the road, and it wouldn't budge. And when everyone was upset, they wailed. In the end, there was more than enough for everyone, and they had plenty. Was there a problem? Was it solved? Were two or more things compared? Use your text structure bookmark to figure out what the text structure might be. Is it cause and effect, problem and solution, cause, problem and solution, or comparison? When you're ready, pause your video and answer the text structure question. What is the text structure of the passage? A. Comparison. B. Cause and effect. C. Problem and solution. D. Cause, problem, and solution. Welcome back, Comprehension Detectives. I identified the text structure as cause, problem, and solution. So we'll use these sentence stems, the cause is, the problem is, and the solution is, to write our main idea for the story. Pause your videos and text in your answer now. When you're ready, press play and I'll show you what I wrote. Here's what I wrote for the main idea for the whole selection. The cause was Jamie O'Rourke planted a magical Pratty seed. The problem was the seed grew a potato so large it blocked the road. The solution was the whole town worked together to eat the potato, and Jamie promised not to plant another one. How does yours compare? Let's use our main idea sentence stems to answer a multiple choice main idea question. Here we go. Remember, we're looking for the answer choice that contains the cause, the problem, and the solution in order to best answer this question. What is the best main idea of the selection? A. After Jamie planted a magical Pratty seed that blocked the road, the whole town worked together to eat it. Jamie promised not to plant another magical seed. B. Jamie O'Rourke was the laziest man who avoided planting, watering, weeding, and anything else it took to grow a potato. He trusted the saints to provide for him and his wife. C. Jamie O'Rourke caught a leprechaun. The leprechaun convinced him that his pot of gold was quite empty. In place of the pot of gold, Jamie took a magical seed that would grow the biggest Pratty seed in the world. D. The people of the town made an agreement to provide food for Jamie and Eileen to eat in the future. Jamie was happy because he could go back to being a lazy man. Great work, detectives! Now let's extend our main idea to write a summary for the passage. Remember, our main idea was this. The cause was Jamie O'Rourke planted a magical Pratty seed. The problem was the seed grew a potato so large it blocked the road. The solution was the whole town worked together to eat the potato, and Jamie promised not to plant another one. Think about some details that you could add to the cause, the problem, and the solution in order to extend it to a summary. Pause your video and discuss that with your adult partner. When you're ready, press play to see what I wrote for my summary. Hey detectives, here's what I put for my summary of the passage. The cause was Jamie O'Rourke planted a magical Pratty seed he was given by a leprechaun. The problem was the seed grew a potato so large it blocked the road to and from the village. The solution was the whole town worked together to eat the potato, and Jamie promised not to plant another one. The village made an agreement to provide food for him and his wife. It's time to answer a multiple choice summary question. What is the best summary of the selection? Remember to look for the answer choice that contains your cause, your problem, and your solution, plus a few added details. A. Jamie O'Rourke was the laziest man who avoided planting, watering, weeding, and anything else it took to grow a potato. Therefore, his wife Eileen performed all duties to grow puny potatoes. B. Jamie was given a magical Pratty seed by a leprechaun. He planted the seed and it grew a potato so large it blocked the road to and from the village. The whole town worked together to eat the potato and promised to provide food for Jamie and his wife if Jamie promised to never again plant a magical seed. C. Jamie O'Rourke caught a leprechaun on his way to confession. The leprechaun convinced him that his pot of gold was empty. In place of the gold, Jamie took a magical seed that would grow the biggest pratie in the world. Jamie bragged about how he outsmarted the leprechaun to win the seed. D. Due to the pratie blocking the road to and from the village in Ireland, the people of the village learned to work together to saw, chop, and cart huge pieces of the potato. The people continued to work together as they ate the potato for every meal. Pause your videos and text in your answers. You're doing great work, comprehension detectives. It's time for us to infer. Remember, when we infer, we take clues from the text, we mix it together with what we already know, and we draw a conclusion. What can the reader conclude Jamie meant by the sentence, "I saved a potato eye for a seed, and it's just about time to plant it"? What can the reader tell about Eileen from her actions when the story began? Pause and think about these questions. Discuss them with your adult partner. When you're ready, push play. What can the reader conclude Jamie meant by the sentence, "I saved a potato eye for a seed, and it's just about time to plant it"? A. Jamie learned the value of hard work and was ready to get to work for the next planting season. B. Jamie's character remained unchanged. He planned to use a magical seed again. C. Jamie liked to save useless things. D. Jamie wanted to give the seed to Eileen as a gift. What can the reader conclude about Eileen from her actions when the story began? A. Eileen was just as lazy as Jamie. She preferred shortcuts and rests to hard work and success. B. Eileen pretended to hurt her back just to see what Jamie would do. C. Eileen believed in the power of hard work. When Jamie refused to work to grow potatoes, she planted, watered, weeded, and dug up the potatoes herself. D. Eileen knew how to make Jamie work. When she told him winter was coming, she was able to get him right to working on the garden. Pause your videos and send in your answer to the last question. Thank you so much for joining us this week, Comprehension Detectives. I hope you enjoyed reading Jamie O'Rourke and the Big Potato. I look forward to joining you again next week. Remember, we can all be super readers. This is Captain Comprehension, signing off.